Hi, I'm supposed to be working on a video, but when I'm not, I've been partaking in some Gundam D&D tabletop shenanigans with people in my Discord server. For our campaign, we've mostly been jerry-rigging bits and pieces from the Steam Workshop for game pieces, of which there are luckily a fair amount of. A problem pertains in which nothing stays the same style, and I really wanted a custom paint job on my figure rather than tinting a model that loses the tint when you change the looping effect. Not to mention with players customizing their loadouts with unconventional arms, it would be more immersive to see your figure wielding the weapon it currently has equipped. So after about a month of being unable to find in-depth tutorials and screwing around in Blender and Unity, I finally got subpar enough results to begin providing our DM and players with figures for the campaign. And with this knowledge and more than enough proof that it works, and to lessen the amount of work I have to do for the campaign, I decided to share the process I go through making custom models and asset bundles, so that way more people can get more creative with their tabletopping. A good chef always prepares their tools before they begin cooking. But really the only tool we'll need for now is Blender. I'm using version 3.6, but more recent versions should work too, and Tabletop Simulator. Set up a folder somewhere dedicated to Blender exports too.
I'll make this easy to remember. Keep your station clear, or I will kill you!
We're also going to need a model for this whole process, so I'm using a GM from Gundam Battle Operation 2 as an example, but feel free to download whatever model you want to use. I think it should work just as well. Import your model into Blender and scale it to appropriate size for TTS. Using the floor grid in Blender for reference, your model shouldn't need to be much larger than the 2x2 squares, since you can resize it later. Next, clean up any unwanted parts of your model and select all parts of the model in the hierarchy. Then conjoin them using Ctrl-J. While you have the model selected, go to the UV Editing tab. After getting jump scared by the mess of vertices and vertexes, create a new image to work on and set the dimensions to 4096 by 4096 and name it for later. Make it more manageable and organized by selecting all of them by hitting the A key or clicking and dragging the cursor to select them all. Then, hit the U key and click Unwrap to properly sort out those messy vertexes. Now, head to the Shading tab and create a new material. Pressing the Shift and A key, add an image texture node and connect the color dots. Drop down the image list and select the image we created earlier. Now, we get to my favorite part, painting! If you just want the model itself and can deal with tinting it in TTS, bucket the model white and you're good to go. But if you don't mind the artistic endeavor for tabletop fun, bucket the model the color it's a majority of, and get to painting. I recommend making the brush color something bright and vibrant, marking the model with the brush, tracking it down on the image texture, undo the mark, and paint bucket the part the desired color, and repeat. I'll do this off screen, so feel free to pause and put on some background noise while you paint your model. I'll be back in a second.
Several hours later.
Okay, that took longer than I thought. But we've got the GM painted and ready for export. Save the image texture as a PNG and head back to the Layout tab. Select the model and nothing else, File, Export, Wavefront.obj. Very important that you check the Limit to Selected Only box. We only need the model. Name it accordingly and export. Now, just in case your model can't stand on its own, create a cube by pressing Shift and A. Select Mesh, then Cube. Make the cube almost invisible by changing its property Viewport Display to Wire. Fine-tune the shape of the cube to fit your model, doesn't have to be perfect, and export it similarly to your model with the exception of just calling it a collider. We won't need it too importantly if you plan on following this guide to the Unity portion. Boot up Tabletop Sim, open the Objects menu, Custom, Model, and open the necessary files for the following fields, selecting the Cloud option after you do so they work in multiplayer. Model Mesh takes the OBJ file of your main model. Diffuse Image takes the texture image PNG of your model. Normal Bump I don't care. And Collider takes either the same OBJ file as your model or the collider box we saved earlier. Select the type of model yours is. Depending on what changes the function of the model. I highly recommend changing the model material properties as well. Turn anything with a number down to or as close to 0 as possible. Import and voila! We've technically got ourselves a custom model. Flipping it over demonstrates what a lack of a collider gets us, so spawn in another with a collider box. Woo! They may be a bit mundane, but I think this is pretty useful for stationary objects or NPCs that don't need much function. But what if you wanted your figure to change armaments and poses? Think about the almost limitless potential. Take this save GM as an example. The weapons change and the arms shift, all in one complete package. Or should I say, asset bundle? Asset bundling is, in my opinion, the best way to import custom models into TTS. Models look better, and they have access to looping effects allowing for weapon switching goodness. But this is where I risk losing some people, because we have to deal with the most terrifying of game engines.
You
Unity.
This is ultimately an unskippable requirement since TTS was made in Unity. But luckily, the team at Berserk Games made several tutorials and resources to help guide us along. Unluckily, the video tutorial is old as heck, and the resource is really vague on looping effects, so I had to learn this by stumbling around myself for these results. Referring to TTS resources, we'll need a couple of new tools in this kitchen. First of all, Unity, specifically the version 6000.0.62F1. It should be the most recent version of Unity, but I could be wrong, especially as of now. Second would be the project file from the attached GitHub link. This file has everything necessary for asset bundling in Tabletop Sim, and there's no other way around it. Download the GitHub file as a zip file, save it somewhere easy to find, and unzip it. Boot up the Unity hub and select the project file you unzipped. After waiting a minute and some, Unity will open with everything looking less cluttered than mine. I need to clean up a little. I also shifted a few windows around, but we'll only need the Hierarchy, Project, and Inspector windows. In the Project window under the Prefabs folder, right-click and create a new folder to organize all of our assets. Open the folder, right-click again, and import a new asset. Find your exported Blender file, select all the assets you'll be using, and import. Our model needs to be painted, so right-click again, choose Create, then Material. Rename the material, click on it to open it in the inspector, and drag your texture file right on up to the material's albedo box. Click on your model to open it in the inspector, go to the Models Materials tab, and drag the material we made to the default matte nub thing. Then hit Apply to paint that bad boy. Drag the model from the Project window over to the Hierarchy window, and our little pride and joy sees the light of day. Okay, almost there. We just need to jump over a few more hurdles, so just hang in there. Under our model is a default model, and we want that. So right-click our model in the Hierarchy window, go down to Prefab, and unpack that sucker completely. Rip the default out of the loving arms of your model and erase the original out of existence. Rename the default if you want, then drag it back from the Hierarchy window back down to the Project window. There might be an easier way to do this, but this worked for me, so whatever. Now we gotta add components to the default model so it works properly. Add a component, search for collider, then add a mesh collider. And just in case, add a box collider too so we can do away with that pesky Blender collider OBJ we made earlier. Move the mesh collider up, then finally add the last component, search TTS and add the TTS asset bundle effects. And our model is primed for bundling. Real quick rundown. Trigger effects are temporary, looping is forever. So I'll just focus on looping effects for now. In the Hierarchy, select the default model and click the arrow to take a deep dive into its guts. In the inspector, add and subtract however many looping effects you want, I'm doing 3, and name them according to the object or state the model will equip. I'm keeping mine simple. Just a gun and a saber for the model to hold. Repeat the instructions from earlier up to adding materials to the models, because we won't need to unpack their baggage. I'm just reusing some assets I made earlier. Drag and drop your desired assets from the Project window to the Hierarchy window. I recommend one at a time because once placed, you'll have to fine-tune where you want the asset to be placed on your model. It looks like a bit of a mess, so let's clean it up some. Select the default model in the Hierarchy list. Open the looping effect you want to add an asset to, and add a game object. Then drag the desired asset from the Hierarchy to the game object box. After you've done that, select the asset in the Hierarchy window, check the box next to its name in the inspector. This hides the asset until the looping effect containing the asset is selected. It also just dawned on me that you could use looping effects for fashion. Give your model a hat! Anyway, click the back arrow at the top of the Hierarchy to back out of this view, and everything should be ready to go. At the bottom of the inspector, under the model viewer, you'll see the asset bundle box. Create a new asset bundle, and rename it to fit your liking. Right-click anywhere in the Project window, and select Build Asset Bundles. Give the engine some time to cook, and after a second or two, a file window will open with the finished asset bundle. Finally, after all this time, go into Tabletop, Objects, Components, Custom, Asset Bundle. Select the main file, find the Asset Bundles file in the TTS GitHub files, and select your asset bundle. Choose its type and material, and import. There we go, the little guy looks much better, and he has his trusty arms. But he looks a little lifeless, unlike his counterpart over here, adapting his form to every weapon he has. How do we accomplish this? Easy! We go back to Blender. If your model came pre-boned with an armature, select the armature in object mode, then swap to pose mode. Here you can select and manipulate any of the bones using the rotation tool. Screw around with these until you get the pose you want. I'll do the same, so give me a sec.
2 hours later.
Okay, it took a bit longer than expected. Do make sure to keep your model lined up with the x-axis line to make things less derpy. Now take the model and export it the same way we did earlier under a different, yet similar, file name. And don't forget to limit to selected only. Okay, give me a minute to make a couple more poses real fast.
3 hours later.
Alright, got a kneeling pose. File, export, OBJ, selected only, rename and export. Now another one for good measure.
You get the idea.
Alright, got another pose done. Now we simply export once more and save your file, because we're gonna make a token piece for this bit. Make a new Blender file, delete that stupid cube again, and Shift A to add a cylinder mesh. Scale it down to the lovely 2x2 grid we use as a size reference, and scale the cylinder down vertically so it's a little slab. I've dolled mine up a bit with a bevel, but all that's left to do is basically what we've done before with UV unwrapping, shading, painting, and exporting the now token. Okay, back in Unity. Set your last model's asset bundle to none so you don't overwrite it. Import in all of the new models and textures, and add their respective materials. You can reuse the same material from the original model for the new ones. Now, start the asset bundling setup using your token instead of your model, taking out the token's default and adding the components. The token default now plays the role of our model's default from earlier, except we're going to work with just a little bit more. Enter the token default's guts and start dragging and dropping the poses like crazy. Line them up with the token and add them to their respective looping effects. Add however many game objects you need for each looping effect, and fine-tune as you would normally. If you want to reuse an asset in a different location, drag it from the project window to the hierarchy again to create a duplicate, and place it as you wish. Hide all assets and back out of the token's guts. Create a new asset bundle for the token default, and build that sucker! Back in Tabletop Sim, for maybe the last time in this video, import the token asset bundle and shut up, lightning! And there we go! Different poses, different weapons, different combinations of both! Don't forget to save the object so you can spawn in as many as you want. Now you can set up your tabletop session with all the friends you don't have available because everyone is busy! Thank you for watching. I hope this guide tutorial thing helped you create custom models for your games. I finished writing the script after my session got cancelled because we were missing 2 players and the Dungeon Master! I'm out of here. Peace!